So our first speaker is Karen Meyer. She is the librarian at the Plattsmouth Public Library in Plattsmouth, Nebraska. And let's see if I can unmute her mic. Karen, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, great. What we're going to do is we are going to give her presentation control. And how this should work is each presenter is going to speak for about 40 minutes, and then we'll pass along the questions. So like I said, if you have them as you're going, just go ahead and submit those. Karen, we do see your PowerPoint. You are all set and ready to go.
Hi, everyone. I would like to begin the presentation with just a little bit of background about our environment here at the library. We've been providing computer classes for approximately a year. I teach 6 different classes on a wide variety of topics. And the patrons are starting to see the library as a place where they can go to get questions answered, and specifically technology questions. So the wait list for our computer class is around 60, 70 people. I can only take 13 people at a time, so we are getting around to everybody, but we're glad to see that the patrons are seeing us as somebody who can be available to answer technology questions. We have a number of different avenues for promoting the computer classes and the technology things that we have. And I think as part of that is why we are beginning to see that there are a lot more people coming to us and making themselves, coming into the library or even calling us on the phone. So when we decided to look at e-readers as another technology avenue that we needed to explore and provide services to our patrons, it was sort of a natural fit. Now there's a number of reasons that we started talking about e-readers. We started getting questions, like I mentioned, in person and by phone. Our staff had little or no knowledge of the topic. We were getting questions about how to access Overdrive, which, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is a service for patrons to borrow e-books from libraries. The state of Nebraska has a consortial purchase of Overdrive, and there are dozens of libraries that participate in that. So we are able to provide a wide range of e-books to our patrons. And as that service has become more popular and as more and more e-readers are out there in the hands of the public, we are beginning to get more questions. Only one staff person had a Nook. The rest of us have never really even held an e-reader before we started getting into this. And we felt that we really needed to start to educate ourselves so that we can be the resource person for the public. The growing popularity of e-readers has been evident over the last few years. And one of the reasons we started in particular looking at this was in the fall, we realized as we get closer to Christmas, prices might be coming down on e-readers. People might be getting them as gifts, things like that. So we knew that they're just going to go nowhere other than up. So the things that we had to do is we had to start preparing ourselves. Some of the first things we did, since a lot of the questions dealt with Overdrive, is we went to the Overdrive website. And they have some very useful information on overdrive.com. Personally, I like the information that you get with the digital help once you're within the Overdrive program, because some of that is a little bit more tailored to your specific situation. So when we're talking about checkouts, returns, that kind of thing, those are often determined by the consortium that has the subscription to Overdrive. So loan periods might be different, checkout maximums might be different, and so the digital help from within the Overdrive program helps that quite a bit. We also have the benefit of the Nebraska Library Commission provides training on a regular basis on topics of all sorts. They do online training weekly. They also created a class on e-readers that was a full-day session. And with that session, we were able to work with and see the Barnes & Noble Nook Color, a Sony Reader Touch, Amazon Kindle, the first generation, and an Apple iPad. We first were shown how to use them and some information, given information on them. And then in the afternoon, we were given opportunities to actually physically handle them, work through some exercises on them. So that was very helpful. 2 staff people went to the initial offering of that training. And we pulled out of that training a lot of new information. We had also gotten some training on Overdrive through that full-day session. The Overdrive part, when we went away from it, we felt like we really could have used a little bit more in that avenue. And when the 3 additional staff people went to the second offering of that training, they came back and said, oh, they added a lot more information on Overdrive. So thank you, Michael, and others in that class who prepared that class. So the 2 of us who went to the first session actually were able to learn more from the people who went to the second session, because a lot more had been incorporated into it. We all took away different information. We all felt like there were different things that we liked about different devices. Those of us who went to the first ones felt like the Amazon Kindle, because it was the first generation, we felt a little more awkward with that one because it has the actual keypad on the device itself. It's not a touchpad. So that was hard to get used to for some of us. For the extra functionality for the iPad and the Nook Color, those were, if we had the money, I would love to buy those kind of things. We decided that it was important for us to purchase the devices so that we could actually have them here in the library and work with them and be able to show people on a device how to operate the device. And so we decided to purchase 2 of the e-readers. We purposely waited until the the Kindle Touch came out because, like I said, we were not real thrilled with the first generation. So we went ahead and in the fall we purchased the Kindle Touch and the Nook Simple Touch. The color readers were great for a lot of purposes, different purposes. The big benefit for the colors are the ones where you're purchasing nonfiction, anything with pictures in it, cookbooks, anything that has a lot of graphics, nice looking color art for the cover, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different reasons why you would go with one device over the other. To stay on the lower end side, we decided to go with the simple ones. Now, another thing that training helped stress was registering both your device and the Adobe Digital Editions, which is used for the Nook and many other devices to download ebooks. As we've gone through and helped other people with their devices, we have likewise carried that through and stressed to them how important it is to register both their device and to download the Adobe Digital Edition and to authorize that software as well through Adobe. We've also had cases. This last week I've been working quite often with a couple who have been getting no permission to copy here and licensing error messages within Adobe Digital Editions, and we feel that some of that has stemmed from a daughter purchased the device for them and maybe originally registered it under her name, There are ways for you to deactivate or deauthorize or deregister both devices and the software. So that's what we've had to do for them, and they're still trying to work through some of their issues with Adobe on the digital reader piece, the digital editions. We did purchase the e-readers in the fall. We made sure before we powered them up, it takes several hours to do that, but before we did any setup, we gathered as many staff as could possibly come to see the process, because we wanted to make sure that as many staff as possible saw what the individual user was going to go through. So from turning on the machine, a little startup guide starts and shows you some basic information. The actual process of registering it. The library has a generic email account, so that was used in order to register all of the devices and the software. And during this process, we took notes. And these notes became the startup for our handouts that we gave during our class sessions. There's a lot of information that we put down as far as the differences between the steps that you take for registering a Kindle versus a Nook. And all of this helped give us that background, that initial start for our handouts. Now, we did have classes that we made available. We originally were looking at doing a Google search. We did a search for Overdrive tutorials. We found several. We considered adding those to our website, but because they were specific to a particular library or library system, and they always started out with go to this website and start here, and they were also available showing checkout periods and things that were specific to that library system, we decided not to add those to our own website. So we decided to create sessions. We chose to do it in the week between Christmas and New Year's because we figured a lot of people would be getting new devices and maybe not sure where to start with their e-readers or just to get more familiar with them. So we provided a morning session and an afternoon session. Each were 2 hours. We advertised in our local paper. Our community is only about 6,500 people, and we were expecting to get people from our own community and from the outside areas, people who are already members of our library or who receive our local paper. When we saw a few days before the event that the event had been picked up by the Omaha World Herald and advertised there, we got a little concerned. We weren't sure if we would get people from outside of our community. Cass County is not all that big, but the Omaha is in, and the people who receive the Omaha World Herald extend for the 2 counties north of us, and we would therefore get a lot wider readership of that. So we weren't sure how much that was going to affect our attendance. At that point, it was a little hard to make any changes. So we went through with our event as it was and just prepared to expect any number of people. When we have people calling in and asking about the class, we asked them to make sure that their devices were already powered up. If it was something they got for Christmas, we wanted to make sure that they already took the couple of hours to power it up. Otherwise, we couldn't do anything with their readers. We discovered when people started showing up or asked about the classes, we discovered that there were a few people there that wanted to just listen, and they didn't have an e-reader yet, and they weren't sure which one they wanted or what the e-readers were all about. So they were coming to us for information about e-readers and maybe some information about how to decide which one to go with. So we did get a few other questions not related to actually the handling of the e-reader, but more a selection process. We expected to get more questions about how to change the text size and things like that, but we actually found that most of the questions we got from people were about the downloads. We spent a considerable amount of time on that. Some of the things that we talked about in the getting ready, getting started section of our class, we talked about authorizing devices. In the Kindle, it's authorized during the setup process. In the Nook, it's authorized when you plug it into the computer. It'll ask you to authorize it to the computer. And here again is where we continue to stress that the same email account be used to register your device. And if you have to use Adobe Digital Editions for Nook or other devices, Kindle does not require that software, then make sure that they authorize them all to the same email address. Makes for a much simpler life. Now, if for some reason there is a problem, you can deregister, just like if you have advanced to from a Kindle first generation to a Kindle Flame, and we've had a few people like that in that class. You can deregister the machine that you're no longer working with and pass it on to someone else. When you deregister, you lose the books that are on there, but that can be done. You can also deactivate the Adobe Digital Edition software. Now that I had to look on the internet for actually how to do it. It's when you're in Adobe Digital Editions, you hold down Control Shift and D for deregister, and that will prompt you for if you want to deregister or not. So that's not written down anywhere. You have to go find that on the internet. And there's no little file button in Adobe Digital Edition, so you can actually go find some of that information. We went through some basic information on the e-readers, such as, and again, we tried to compare in this general part of the session because we were all in a circle talking in general terms. So we would compare e-readers in general terms, like how many books can it hold. Don't worry, you're going to fill it up. Those e-readers can take 1,000 books roughly on a Nook Simple Touch and 1,400 e-books on a Kindle Touch. Now these answers, we didn't pull them out of the air. We went to the website, so we pulled them out so that we had something to base our statements on. We also indicated what the battery life was like and said that it depends on your reading habits and the kinds of books that you might have, how often you're reading. So, for example, the battery life on a Nook Simple Touch is 2 months based on 1 hour of reading daily. So if you read 1 hour daily, it'll last about 2 months. Again, throughout this process, the conversation with the patrons, we had to qualify a number of times to your mileage may vary depending on your reading habits, the books that you're downloading, etc. We talked about Wi-Fi versus 3G. A lot of the devices come with 3G, but it's actually easier for most downloads to be done through the Wi-Fi. A lot of people asked, what is Wi-Fi? So you have to be prepared to answer that and talk a little bit about, well, if you have a wireless router for your internet access, you may be able to use the Wi-Fi in your home. The simplest way for me to probably approach it with most patrons was to say, have the device look for a Wi-Fi connection. If it finds one, you're great, you're ready to go. If it doesn't, then you might have to go to a Wi-Fi hotspot like the bookstores, like the libraries. A lot of libraries have free Wi-Fi, and so do we. And I also cautioned about if you find Wi-Fi and you think it's your neighbor's Wi-Fi, to go ahead and ask the neighbor if you want to try to use that, ask the neighbor if you can do so. So I just cautioned them about that. And in the Wi-Fi scenario as a point of problem, we did have a person come in with an iPhone. She had been trying to download a book to her iPhone for a long time, and she just could not make it come down to her phone. She came into the library and asked us to help her out. Now, because an iPhone, by its nature, typically uses 3G or 4G, we had to show her how to force the phone to go look for a Wi-Fi connection. Now, since she was in the library, it found the library's Wi-Fi, and within seconds, her ebook was down on her phone, and she was just thrilled. So sometimes it's just a matter of forcing it to go look for a Wi-Fi connection and not be tied up in the 3G, 4G process. We talked a lot about downloading ebooks. We talked about things in general, such as download time, and that depends on your connection and the book. Fiction is probably the fastest because there's no pictures. Books with color pictures, we were told by a Barnes & Noble rep, may take up to 5 minutes to download. And generally, you're going to choose Wi-Fi to download because it's better and faster than a 3G. If you have a tablet or other e-reader that has internet capability, you can search for the ebooks and download them all within the same device. If you have the Nook Simple Touch or the Kindle Touch, then you're going to have to, if you're using anything outside of the Nook store or the Kindle store, you're going to want to go to a computer, search for items, download them to the computer, and then to your device. So we talked in general terms about that kind of information. We talked about where to find ebooks. We mentioned that there are all the devices have their online stores. So you can go to the Nook store, you can go to the Kindle store and find information. The searching on the different devices varies. So on the simple devices, the searching can be a little less robust. Searching on the Kindle Touch doesn't show the prices in the initial view. You have to click on them to see how much the cost is for the books, and wasn't able to sort very well. So you actually on the Nook, or excuse me, on the Kindle, you might prefer to search on a computer and then make your choices. Some of the other things we had discovered or told people about or things like if you are going to look for ebooks that are not part of the stores, you will probably have to go to a computer unless your device also has internet capability. There's another little thing that is available through a Nook. On the Nook, they allow you to lend your ebooks. Each Barnes & Noble ebook can be lent one time over its lifetime. If you can loan it for a 2-week period to a friend, once you loan it, that's the only time you can loan it. But that's something that's unique to the Nooks. I don't know if anybody else will be picking up that functionality, but we did make that known so that people could use it if they chose to. We also mentioned that the online stores often can take a gift card and store that information for you so that as you purchase ebooks, your purchase prices will automatically be deducted from that gift certificate. They always need a backup credit card so that if you do get down to a zero balance, then it can charge your credit card for anything over that. But that's a nice little feature for some people. We talked about free places on the internet to get ebooks. We concentrated on Project Gutenberg. It might be one of the most well-known locations on the internet for free ebooks. It has 38,000 free ebooks in multiple languages. These are generally items that are out of copyright, so you're going to find Shakespeare, Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, a lot of different things on there. It has a fairly simple search engine, and you can download books. Sometimes you can choose to download them with images or without images. Overdrive we went into in more depth because it is a library service and because it does provide another avenue for free ebooks. In our case, we directed them to our library's website. We have a link from there to the statewide subscription to the Overdrive, and we talked about how to download books. We mentioned that if you use pretty much anything other than a Kindle, you will need to download Adobe Digital Edition, and that's actually linked from the bottom left corner when you're in Overdrive. There's a link straight there so that you don't have to do go to Adobe, it'll automatically take you there. And again, stress that when you download Adobe Digital Editions, you do need to register it, and that you're going to be using the same email address that you used for registering your device. When you ask for it to be downloaded, Adobe Digital Editions, the link from within Overdrive takes you to Adobe, and it's a fairly simple process. You do need an Adobe ID, but when it requires that, it also gives you a link to create an Adobe ID, which is a simple process. It asks for just a small amount of information. Now, if there were, and occasionally we would get in our classes, people who were using other devices, we did mention that Overdrive Media Console is needed for Android, BlackBerry, iPhone, iPad, and Windows Phone 7 devices. So they do not use the Adobe Digital Editions, they use Overdrive Media Console. We also talked about limiting the search within Overdrive to just items that are available. People sometimes want something right now. I'm going on vacation, I want something to take with me. And there is an option now within Overdrive to identify only items with copies available, and that's a nice feature. We also point out and recommend that they go to the advanced search, because besides the ability to limit to copies currently available, the advanced search allows you to choose a specific format. So especially when in the fall the Kindle was first made available through Overdrive, and they could go to the advanced search, and under the format they could specify they only want Kindle books with copies available. So that was a double benefit for them. Same for EPUB, which the Nook uses. They are able to specify a format so that they can get something immediately in the format they need it for. So that was under advanced search. And because each subscription to Overdrive is a little different, we did talk about our checkout limits. We have a limit of 4 ebooks can be checked out at one time. And if they wanted to check out an additional book and they already have 4 checked out and maybe they were done with them, we told them how to do the returns on the devices. And the devices are done, the returns are done through, for a Kindle, the Amazon Kindle account. And for a Nook, the returns are done through Adobe Digital Editions. So we made sure that they knew how to return them in order to get new books. The length of loan periods also varies. For our consortial purchases, we have a length of loan period for ebooks of 7, 14, or 21 days. Defaults to 14 days, but they do have the option of changing that to 7 or 21. So it's again another piece that we point out that they do have some options there. Now we've been talking mostly about books that people want immediately. We also told them if there's something you are specifically looking for, by all means go ahead and look for that title, and if there's no copies currently available, place a hold on it. When you place a hold on it, Overdrive prompts you for your email address. Then when the book becomes available, they'll send you an email saying you can log in and get the ebook now. And then there were some screenshots of the advanced search within Overdrive to help them find things. Now we concentrated on ebooks, but some of the devices also have speakers. Some are very tiny. But we did mention that some of the devices are capable of playing audiobooks. They may need a separate app. They may have the speakers on there, but for some of the devices that was an option. Now, when we were in the session, our patrons were in a circle. We were just sharing information. And some of the time, the patron was sharing information that we did not know. For instance, one of our patrons mentioned that there's a bar on Main Street that has great Wi-Fi. And if they wanted to sit outside the bar during the hours that the bar was open until 2 a.m., you could get great Wi-Fi out there. So that's something that we had not experienced yet. So that was some ways that patrons were able to help each other. We also had cases where people who maybe were on their second generation of e-reader or who had the e-readers for a while would sit down and share information with the neighbor about something that they knew that the newbie maybe didn't know. So we did see some sharing amongst people that were there. After we gave them the general information, we split into two groups. One staff person took the people who owned a Kindle to a computer and demonstrated the Overdrive download and a Project Gutenberg download. Another staff person took those who had the Nook and demonstrated the same things, the Overdrive and Project Gutenberg downloads. We did find a few people who did not have their devices registered, so a third person was able to help them register their devices and then get them into the sessions where they could actually see some downloads. And in the instructions, the handouts that we gave out, we did have a separate section for Kindle and Nook because there are separate steps for the devices when you are in Overdrive as well as Project Gutenberg. For instance, when you're in Overdrive using a Kindle, you confirm your checkout, and it takes you to Amazon for you to sign into your Amazon account. And from there you click on Get Library Book. And then from there it's an automatic, you don't even need to connect to the device to the computer. It's done through the Wi-Fi connection. Now, returning the book has to be done from within the Amazon account as well. So if you're in the Manage Your Kindle section, each line for each book that's on your device ends with a little icon that says Actions. And if it is a book that has been checked out from a library and it has not expired yet, the checkout period has not expired, one of the actions will say Return the library book. And that's what you do to return your book. From there, you would also then need to delete it. If on a Kindle the expiration date has already been passed for when the checkout ended, you will get a note on the Nook that says a notice and loan ended. Those, it took us a little while to figure out how to remove those. Again, it's not something that's immediately apparent. You do have to hold down, press on the notice, wait for a small menu to show up. When it shows up, one of the last things will be to delete the notice. So that happens if you do not return the book before the end of the loan period. The Overdrive for the Nook, when you confirm the checkout, actually when you tell it to open, it will open in Adobe Digital Editions. It will show you the book, and from there you can click on the cover art and drag it over to your Nook. The Nook will show up when you plug the Nook into the computer. So Adobe Digital Editions will load. If you don't have your Nook plugged in yet, you'll plug it in, and the Nook will show on the left-hand side. From there, you can drag the book into your Nook, and you're all set to go. And it takes a relatively small amount of time. When we did the demos, they were downloaded within a few seconds. They showed up on the device. Now, when you're using Adobe Digital Editions, there's a little arrow in the upper left corner of the cover art, and it is from there that you will be using, you'll be finding the commands to return the book if you want to return it before the due date, or to remove the book from your library. Library books stay there only for the period of time that you have the loan. If you download something else, something like from Project Gutenberg, it will stay there forever because it's not time restricted. Once you download from Project Gutenberg, you can have that book forever if you choose. We also chose to do a download from Project Gutenberg for both the Kindle and the Nook in our demos. In both cases, they start the same. You choose the format you want once you have found a title. you save it to your PC. Now the difference is when you actually make the change, when you actually move it from your device, computer to your device, the difference is once you plug your device in to your computer, on the Kindle, you drag the title to the Kindle's Documents folder. On the Nook, you drag the book from Project Gutenberg or from some other free service to the root of the Nook. So if you're plugged in and your Nook says it's on drive F, you would just drag it to drive F. If you have a Kindle, you would drive it to F and the folder called Documents. So there's a little bit of difference there. But that gave them the opportunity to download something that they just found free on the internet, and the instructions on where to put it so that it actually shows on their device. Now, we did find that after doing the first session, we thought maybe it would be a good idea to improve it. We decided to add more screenshots. We had just the one screenshot of the overdrive session. So we've added screenshots for a number of other different parts, including the Adobe Digital Edition's downloads, and where to find the return the book, that kind of thing. We thought we might have separate sessions for people who owned a Nook and people who owned a Kindle, because it did split them. We had about 24 people in each session, which made it a little bit more cumbersome to work with them one-on-one. And we also, there's also the Barnes & Noble representatives that we might offer, or might ask them to come in and help us. We also, because we did have more people than we expected, we probably will use an LCD to project this to the audience so more people can see things a little bit easier. Benefits, we had a lot of benefits. We thought it was definitely worth the time that we put into it. Several people registered for new cards, including people who lived outside of our city limits. Those who live outside the city limits do have to pay for a card, as in a lot of different public libraries. People found that they really liked the program. They liked the fact that we offered it free, and they saw the benefit of having a library card so that they can check out overdrive books. So the price of the library card was worth it when you could see how many books you could download for free over the year from overdrive. They saw the library in a different light, too. We've been trying to promote ourselves as a place to come to answer questions, and technology questions in particular. But this helped them see that maybe they had not expected libraries to deal with e-readers. We're not in competition with them. We're working with them, the devices and with the people. New friends and supporters are always a great benefit, and we found a lot of people would stay in the library longer after the presentation was over, seeing what else the library had, just touring the library. So it was nice to see them stay around and not just leave as soon as the session was over. We continue to get more calls on e-readers. We get about one a day now, and that's a broad estimate. Currently, we're providing help on a one-to-one basis. It was just as actually a part of this, preparing for this session, that I made my sessions, my handouts, more detailed like I had wanted to. So actually they are available. I believe Michael said that he was going to be making the presentations, the PowerPoints, and other materials available. So if that's the case, I will be making that available on the website for the Big Talk conference. And even if not, you can always contact me. I'll be glad to talk to you over the phone. Send me an email, and if you want to talk about any parts of the presentation, experiences you've had, things like that, I'd be glad to talk to people about that. So feel free to contact me. I'm willing to let anybody use any of the handouts that we've got. I've divided them up so that we now have a separate handout for general information and then specific instructions for downloading for Nook, downloading for Kindle, and we have, I also have some screenshots for the process on downloading Adobe Digital Edition. That's generic, so people can use that as well. So I'd like to see if anybody has any questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability.
All right. Thanks, Karen, very much. That was wonderful and perfect timing. That was great. So I think we do have a couple of questions and comments from the audience. So Laura's monitoring those.
Yeah. Our first question is, what is different about a Kindle book at Overdrive? Can a Kindle only use Kindle books?
On a Kindle, yes. When we teach people to use the advanced search and specify they only want to search for books that are of a Kindle format. I believe I've heard of some apps that are capable of using other formats. I always direct them, though, to do a search on the Kindle format. That way they know that they're bringing up titles that they are capable of viewing on their Kindle.
Okay. And another question, or rather a comment, says, I believe Kindle Fire now does offer the lending aspect.
It offers what?
The lending aspect.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to hear. I wasn't sure if Kindle would pick that up just by nature of being from Amazon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
Good question.
Well, while you're looking, I have
Another question.
we just have
Okay.
another question came in from the audience.
Because you are downloading from the internet, is there any concern for virus?
There's always a concern if you're not sure of the site. I feel comfortable with Project Gutenberg and other places that already have been out there for years, and so I recommend them to go to certain sites that they feel comfortable with and that have been available for a while. Be careful. There's always the caution of don't go to Joe Blow's site and download something that may not actually be out there legally.
Okay, and I have a question here. Do you know about the operating status of 3M and where they are at?
I have not heard much of anything on that. Michael, do you have any information on 3M?
Yes and no. For those of you who don't know the background to that, basically at the moment there's Overdrive, there's new competition of a similar service from 3M, and that the state of Kansas ebook system is now running off of the 3M service as opposed to the Overdrive service, and what happened in Kansas is a whole other story that could be its own very long presentation. Beyond that, I don't have any particular details as to how well it's going, whether they're opening it up to other locations yet, that sort of thing. I would say, for the sounds of it, contact the Kansas State Library if you're looking for more details on that project.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question here. Can ebooks be downloaded from Overdrive to a Nook without using a computer?
Not to my knowledge.
And I'll second that.
Yeah.
I want to make one comment, though, too. We had just yesterday a person come in who was using a Kindle, and typically you download things from your Amazon account, and it goes quickly. She did get one where the message said that the publisher did not allow the book to be downloaded wirelessly. Yep. So she had to attach a USB cord for that one. So we instructed her to pull her cord out, attach her Kindle to her device, to her computer, and download it that way. So that was the first time we've encountered that. But the Kindle does not always do it wirelessly. It will require occasionally a USB port.
Yeah, that was a change that happened about 3 weeks ago now with books from the Penguin Publishing Group, where if they're from that publisher or one of its imprints, you do need to transfer it to a Kindle device via USB, whereas other books from other publishers can be transferred to the Kindle wirelessly.
Okay. Is your state library paying for Overdrive?
It provides for it. Michael, I hear you laughing back there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we are.
The Nebraska Library Commission organizes a consortial purchase but each of us pays a fee per library, per our population. So every library who participates in that consortial purchase is paying a portion based on their patron base.
Is anyone using or familiar with a service for ebooks aside from Overdrive or Project Gutenberg?
There's a lot of other free websites out there for ebooks, and like Michael mentioned, the 3M project that's out in Kansas. We were thinking of, on our website, putting down a few links to several different reputable free ebook providers for our patrons who might want to explore other avenues other than Project Gutenberg.
Isn't it
I don't have a list.
It has a good list of places to get free ebooks.
Yeah, there are several lists out there, and the one I can think of off the top of my head as a ebook publisher is a site called Smashwords, which does have free content and does have paid for content. I can pretty much guarantee, though, you've never heard of any of their authors, but that doesn't mean the content isn't any good. It's just an independent. So.
Yeah. Have you considered? I have another question. Have you considered loaning Kindles to get people started, or for those who may not be able to afford them?
We, at this point, we've talked about it very briefly, and at this point decided not to. The University of Nebraska at Omaha does do that. We have decided not to for the simplicity of just we're right now at the beginning and just sort of trying to teach people how to use them. We might consider that in the future. The price for the devices is not that expensive, but it is expensive. So if it didn't come back, we'd be out a little bit of money. So we have not decided to do that yet. We know libraries are doing that. I want to make one other comment that made me think of it. My daughter had played with downloading some free ebooks or looking for free ebooks. And even though sometimes the older material that's outside of copyright is available through the Kindle stores and it says free, she's found that the things that she downloaded were actually, it was easier to read the format and read the book through the Project Gutenberg version as opposed to the Kindle version. So just because you download a book doesn't mean it's going to look and work great. You might want to, especially if you're looking at things that are outside of copyright, try a different format if one download doesn't look good for you.
That's a good tip. Okay, I have another question. Is there a place on the web to go to see what e-readers will download straight to the device and what needs to be downloaded to the computer first and USB'd over to the device?
Overdrive has a nice page on the devices. It lists dozens of devices that it actually works with. There's very limited number of software pieces that are used if you need Overdrive. I think the market is also changing because when we were talking about briefly the audiobooks, I had not thought of audiobooks being downloaded on the e-readers because they do have small speakers when they do have them. But there are more and more people were saying, oh yes, I found an app that will do that for me. So things are changing on a regular basis. But your mileage may vary depending on your device, as we say.
Yeah. I have another question. How would a download to a Nook be handled if the patron doesn't have a personal computer and has to use one at the library?
We prefer not to have the person come in and register their device to our computer because when you plug a Nook in, it's going to want to register to that computer. So we try to discourage that. Mm-hmm. The wireless connection is available for some devices. If they don't have a computer at home, they might actually want to consider getting one of the devices that has internet capability on it so that they can do it all within one device. allows them to do it much more cost effectively than to buy a whole new computer for several $100s, whereas the pads take up are $200 or less usually. So I would recommend doing it that way. Depending on your library, our library is set up so that our public computers, if we reboot them, will revert back to normal, but it does present some problems. You're allowed to register your device, I believe, to 5 different computers, if I'm correct, and after that, I think there's problems. If I'm wrong, please correct me, Michael.
Now, I'm going to say, okay, there are always exceptions, but when we do our workshops, we basically say, do not connect patron e-readers physically to library computers. Like I said, there are exceptions, but generally that's good advice to avoid any and all problems for both you and the patron. So,
okay, our last question. Can audiobooks be downloaded to an iPhone without going through a computer?
If your iPhone has internet capability, yes, you can do it straight from the iPhone. The person who brought in their phone, who had the problem downloading, she had found it on the computer, on her phone, and was trying to download through the phone. So yes, everything can be done through there if you have internet capability.
all right. Thank you, Karen. Your timing was wonderful. There was a lot of great information. We had a lot of wonderful questions coming through. We didn't even have to come up with our own questions, so we got them all from the audience. And so thank you, audience. We always worry about having enough questions. So that's going to wrap up our first session. Karen, I'm assuming that if they can email you if they have any additional questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely email, phone, either way.
Okay. So ring her phone off the hook for her. I'm sure she has nothing else to do. Also, the website's going to stay up. We will put up the presentations and everything, so there'll be places you can leave comments on the website and things like that. So, Karen, I want to thank you very much. You kicked off this event quite wonderfully.